Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Supply Chain Talk. My name is Duncan Brock. I'm a director at the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, or CIPS, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity of hosting today's episode of Supply Chain Talk. Last week, for those of you who were there or who've listened back and watched the episode previously, we were covering the challenge of contraction, responding to COVID and Brexit and other challenges that we've had across the supply chain. So that was a really good, interesting topic. My colleague Phil Broughton was the host of it, so it was great to be able to watch that back as I did after I came back from my holiday last week. So that was a really good session. This week, a very different topic. We're talking about innovative packaging solutions for the supply chain and the way in which we can do that. We've got a couple of great experts who's going to come and join us in a few minutes to bring their expertise in this space about the approaches that you need to take to really bring, I suppose, look at packaging, look at it in a different way, and how you then approach that across the supply chain. So I'm really interested in listening to this, to welcoming the two guests, and to understanding a bit more about this topic as we go forward. Please, as you join us, please do join in. We love to get lots of comments and chat as we go through Supply Chain Talk. So please do add your chats. Let us know that you're here. Let us know who you are and where you're from. So welcome to you, Mark. Great to see you again. It's a very regular contributor and participant in Supply Chain Talk. So welcome to you. But also, if you've got any specific questions that come to light as we go through the discussion, please use the Q&A, add those questions in there, and we'll be delighted to bring those and ask our experts about them as we go forward. Those, as a small incentive, we still do have this wonderful Supply Chain Talk mug, which we issue every week. There's a new mug that goes out to that person who's added the best comment or asked the best question. So I'll be looking for that at the end to make sure that we give that to whoever believes has really contributed to the discussion today. So please join in, and really excited to have this discussion today. So let me bring the first guest in. The first guest we've got today is Sukhdev Singh Saini. He is the Global Toothbrush Packaging Manager at Colgate-Palmolive. Sukhdev, if you'd like to join us, it'd be great to have you on board and to be able to sort of really help us with the first discussion, which is going to be about a news article. Those of you who watched Supply Chain Talk before or listened to it, we have a news article which is broadly more generic, and then we drop into some specifics. So, Sukhdev, welcome to you. Welcome to Supply Chain Talk.
Hi.
Hi. So would you like to maybe give a quick introduction to yourself, Sukhdev, in terms of who you are and what your background is?
Yeah. Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, welcome everybody. So I am right now based out of Birmingham, UK. I work with Colgate-Palmolive as a global toothbrush packaging manager. My responsibility is to take care of the innovation and sustainability needs of the toothbrush category. And yeah, I think happy to learn across different platforms as we are moving into different world altogether, where certainly sustainability innovation is a need of the hour as well. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. And I think everyone will probably understand what Colgate-Palmolive do. I think those brands are well known to everybody. So we probably don't need to describe the company. So welcome to you and welcome to that. So Sukhdev, let's maybe sort of start on the topic of this sort of packaging and the approaches. And I want to use the news article that we chose this week to try and bring this to life a bit. There's an article which was in Packaging Europe a couple of weeks ago now, and it's called Recyclable Packaging Across the Board. Are we there yet? Which I think was quite an interesting, provocative title. But actually, when I started to read this article, a few things came through to me. One, I think, was we know recyclable packaging is a big driver across a lot of sectors, and particularly FMCG. We know that legislation is coming through and is really going to drive a lot of change. But I thought it was really interesting because then the article then goes into a bit more detail around corrugated and the sort of progress that's being made there, but then started to look at the different types of plastics and the different approaches, whether it's sort of tubes with enclosures, whether it's flexibles, pouches. And it was a very different story, I think, to be told in each of those areas about the progress that's been made, but also the challenges and the next steps that need to take place. And I think towards the end of the article, it did also then talk about the fact that collaboration is key here. The collaboration, and it's a theme we come across all the way through Supply Chain Talk, that collaborating with, I suppose end to ends with the whole value chain is critical to success in this area if we're going to make the sort of inroads we want to make in packaging in this way. So a really interesting article, and those of you who have a chance, I really would recommend that you do have a read, because it gives some really good insights and perspectives there. But Sukhdev, I mean, with your background in this area, with your role, I mean, what's your perspective on the progress that's been made with recyclable packaging at the moment?
Yeah, I would say I can start with the two keywords which I noticed on this article: collaboration and scope for growth. And both are very critical in our today's vocabulary. As you said, like people who are joining the supply chain talk, they're looking to understand what's going on. Similarly, there are many people who want to learn more about today's economy, uh, the situation around their raw material, packaging materials, and supply chains. And interestingly, I also subscribe to Packaging Europe along with three or four different packaging newsletters or articles. So I am also a regular reader of Packaging Europe, and this is really interesting piece of information which I just went through as well. I would say collaboration is extremely important in our industry because we work with different institutions, our partners, individuals, experts, and without which I think it would be very difficult to meet the demand which we faced on a day-to-day basis, be it from consumers or from regulatory environment or from environment in terms of sustainability. Uh, so if we have to stay ahead of the curve, I think we need to be talking to each other, understanding what's required, and then getting those products and packaging into the market. Uh, I think a couple of things which I talked I think I can talk about is the FEFCO paperboard and the situation around the corrugated board, where they spoke about how it is important that we do not mix plastics with paperboard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other part I think is about the interesting, very, very interesting work is around the tube, which I liked it actually.
So explain a bit more about that, so that you can't mix the plastics and the corrugated. I mean, because this is all to do with, I suppose liners that are put into the cardboard. The fact that actually then when they go through to be recycled, they can't split them up, or small bits of plastic get into the cardboard recycling. And is that really the challenge here, to try and have it as plain as possible in terms of just corrugated or just plastic?
Yeah. So any recycling stream, I would say, I think couple of critical challenges which always are faced by the industry is one of them is the sorting issue, where definitely if there are different materials coming into a waste stream, how do we sort it? That's one of the critical problem. Second is if there is a percentage of impurity which is beyond process control. Now, in this case, if the amount of plastic or the quality of plastic is very different from what the process or the equipment can manage, I think there will be a huge wastage. There will be stoppages and the efficiency would go down. Anyways, the efficiencies of these recycling streams is really something which is being discussed on everyday basis. And that's the reason I think the costing has to be controlled of the recycled products. So if there are stoppages, if there are issues with regular material, the inflow of the material, I would say it would be very difficult to sustain the processes on day-to-day basis. Hence, I think limiting the percentage of impurities, and in this particular case, if we're talking about the impurity, which is the plastic, into waste paper stream, it's very important, and we are also challenging the norm in our packaging stream as well. We are working towards it in terms of how do we take out the lamination or the film material from all our paper packaging. That's one of our important target for work.
Right, but I'm assuming there's one thing to have the intent to do that, but presumably there's challenges to do with, I don't know, marketing, to do with the printing that's needed, some of the because the packaging in itself is also part of the branding and the image and the for you, Cargo Palmolive, being a very strong brands, often that packaging is where you advertise what it is, what's in there, and make it stand out on the shelf. So is there not a challenge with where the marketing want to drive you to, as against where the recyclability? There must be some, a constant challenge between the two, is there?
Yeah, so you can say it's a tug of war which we cannot win actually. So it's like on one side we have the marketing and our brand promotion, and the other side we have a lot of consumer and the regulations. So I would say there are technologies and innovations which have now enabled the good printing as well as coatings, which will not scuff, or which will keep the printing and the brand effect intact on the paper packaging. That's something which we are working on, and to give the maximum impact on the shelf without plastics on paperboard. That's something which we have to deliver.
Okay, and have you got it across all of the range yet, or is there still more to do? Because I mean, or as you say, I think you said it's a war you can't win, but is it one of those things you're going to have to just keep working at as you go forward?
I would say there is a majority of it which we have already worked upon, and there are few, I would say, pockets where definitely there is work in progress. And I'm sure within the next a couple of quarters we would be able to do justice to those couple of things as well, where we have yet to kind of change over.
Okay. So corrugated is one area. I mean, what about plastics? I mean, there's different types of plastics in there, things like tubes. I mean, is that an area that you're also looking at closely in terms of the tubes and the recyclability of tubes?
Certainly, I think that's one of our key achievement, where our organization definitely has invested, as well as we want all our tubes to be recyclable. In fact, the journey started almost 4 years back, where we started having our first tube, a recyclable tube, which is the HDP based tube, into the market. And now, as we are speaking, there are almost all the regions and multiple brands which are converting into recyclable tube. So it definitely we are invested in this idea, and we want all our recyclable packaging to be in the market by 2025. That's something that's our commitment.
So you got 3 years to go. Is that right? Not that we're counting, but I think it's always interesting when people make those commitments. I mean, it then drives behaviours. So, I mean, with tubes, is it the challenge of the tube in one material and the cap in another, or the closure? I mean, is that where you've got the challenge of trying to move forwards into proper recyclability?
I would say more than the difference in the material of tube and cap, I would say making the tube itself fit for all purpose in terms of the product formulation,
Okay.
the functionality part of it, uh, the barrier requirement of different type of product formulations. I would say that was a key challenge, because we have been using aluminum based tubes for years together, and it was not a definitely easy job to replace aluminum based tube with something which is only plastic. It took a lot of studies in terms of compatibility, barrier, manufacturing, and recyclability complexity. It was immense. Uh, Another important point was delivering the right consumer convenience as well. So we didn't want the consumer to feel that okay, they have received a product which is inferior, or their experience got dissolved somewhere. I think that's where we wanted to keep the experience part almost similar to what they have been using for almost many years. So that was key challenge for us, and definitely I think we have been able to deliver that with our tube.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm sure we'll come back to that as well in terms of the challenges of, I suppose, the future direction of where we're going to here. But maybe good opportunity here to bring in our second guest. So if Dabish could join us. He's Davishish Mandal. He's the head of packaging, pre-development, and sustainability at Beiersdorf. So welcome to you. I think you're based in Mumbai, so it's well into the evening for you. So really appreciate you joining us here and joining us at this session. So maybe Davishish, quick intro to you, and maybe also just explain a bit about Beiersdorf, because I probably didn't recognise the company name, but I recognised the brands when I started to look up what you do. So maybe a quick introduction to you would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Duncan. And hi, Sukhdev. Nice to meet you once again. Hi to all audience. Probably good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And it's a great opportunity to talk on the topic. Sustainability is very close to my heart. Before I start giving my introduction, probably a bit about Biostop as a company. As Duncan, you said, Biostop is, we call ourselves as one of the greatest skincare company in the world. We do everything related to skin of human body, and we do with care, and we also have a policy of care beyond skin for the employees, for the consumers, and for all suppliers and vendors along with us. Nivea is our main brand, which probably is known to more than 90% of the population in the world. We also have brands like Eucerin, Hansaplast, La Prairie, Coppertone in US. Yeah, these are the major brands what Biostop has today. About me, I'm currently based out of Mumbai, responsible for packaging pre-development, which is long-term innovation and sustainability for the emerging markets, especially for the countries like India, Africa, Russia, Turkey, and Middle East, also part of other countries in the Asia Pacific region. That's me in the company for almost 9 years, and before that, I also spent my 7 years in Colgate Palmolive, where Sukhdev is right now in India and Thailand. So that's about me, Duncan.
That's great, thank you. So a very shared history here between the two of you, which is great. So I mean, when we're looking at this article, Debashish, and when we're looking at the challenges of recyclable packaging, I mean, Sukhdev was just talking a bit about sort of corrugated, and we touched a bit on tube there, but also this need to collaborate properly across the value chain. But if you're looking at the article and we're looking at areas of I don't know, flexibles, pouches, and tubes, and sort of, I suppose, what are you seeing as the challenges, and how do you relate to what Sukhdev was just describing there in terms of the progress that's been made, but also the things we still need to do as we go forward here?
Absolutely. So recyclability is a key word now across packaging materials, irrespective of the material type, I would say. And the extent of recyclability varies depending upon the materials. You know, we are really fortunate that PET as a material is highly collected across the world because of the beverage industries. We have the carbonated beverages, soft drinks, and the water bottles. And the countries like the emerging markets like India, Chile, Brazil, Latin America, African countries, also the PET bottles are mostly collected and recycled. And because of that, we get a good quality of recycled PET resins, which are most of the cases are food certified. You know, so Biosdorf is a company where we use mostly rigid packaging materials like HDPE bottles, polypropylene bottles, PP cap, and PET bottles also. So for us, we have taken a pledge that by 2025 we will be reducing the fossil-based virgin plastics by 50% by weight reduction, and also by adding the 30%, at least 30% of recycled plastics. We will make all of our packaging recyclable, reusable, and refillable. So the word recyclable comes into our backbone also. If you take pouch as a topic, as we've seen into in the Packaging Europe magazine, the pouch can be made up of paper, plastics, or combination materials, and recyclable can only be made once uh, it is trending towards more monomaterials. It can be polyethylene only, or it can be polypropylene only, or it can be PET. Polyethylene RPE pouch development is in the fast track than many other materials, I would say, because of its friendly nature of conversion, making it a film form, and also availability. However, polyethylene can not only give the whole lot of properties we need from a packaging now. So we may have to add few of the barrier materials like EVOH into it, and then as long as we are able to reduce the content of the EVOH in the polyethylene pouch, it will be more and more recyclable. One important point what I have realized that recyclability of pouch also based on the country's infrastructure, which can be different across countries. If it is recyclable in UK, doesn't mean that it is recyclable in Brazil, for example, or India. It's purely based out of the infrastructure of the recyclers based out of there, and the collection systems. So I would say, if as a brand we are able to innovate a flexible packaging which is of monomaterial, it will be highly recyclable and it can be used across the products. And I think the whole industry is going towards that, to making the packaging pouches more and more monomaterial based structure.
Right. And I'm assuming, I mean, Sukhdev was talking about the moving from either aluminium tubes to plastic tubes. I mean, the more you go to a single material, presumably there's a lot of sort of structural integrity that you need to be testing out and proving to know that it will survive and it will last and it will still perform in the same way. So is that why there's still a lot to do here? I mean, as you say, it's a lot of development work and a lot of testing work to do across a whole range of different applications.
Absolutely. One more important point, what I feel, that even if the brands are developing the packaging structure, the local infrastructure should also be there to identify that those are monomaterial pouches and collecting separately, not mixing with the multi-material pouches. From outside, if it is printed, it doesn't look different. So the infrastructure is very much important to give a circular economy of the whole system. Yeah, that's why collaboration is very important across value chain.
Yeah, and you were talking there about emerging markets, and it's interesting, isn't it? 'Cause my brother lives in Germany, and when I go and visit him, the amount of boxes he has to put all the separate things into in recycling is significantly more than I do here in England. And we're both very, I suppose, well developed in how we recycle. So I mean, as you say, you could put the effort into creating a recyclable packaging, but if the infrastructure is not there, but that's then presumably down to government investment and initiatives and legislation that need to drive that. Is that what will drive that behavioural change in those emerging markets?
Absolutely. So I lived in Germany for some time. I have seen, initially it was a hassle for us, for my family, to segregate all packaging types into different bins. Then we loved it. And once I see the practice was not there almost like 1, 2, 3 years before in the other countries, but because of the laws and legislations and the effort from the government and the municipalities, the things are becoming different, and it's very fast pace, I would say. And I'm really happy that it's happening. So laws plays a very important role in most of the countries, especially in emerging markets, and consumers and trades are playing a role in the developed markets like Europe and in UK, Germany, or US, for example. There, the consumers are willing to pay more if you're selling your product into sustainable packaging. In some part of the world, laws play more role. In some other part of the world, I would say consumers awareness and the trade pushes the whole topic. Ultimately, the things are becoming better, I would say.
Right. And do you agree with that, Sukhdev? Is that how you see the changes?
Yeah, I would agree. It's a market where the point which Debashish mentioned, every country and every, I would say, strata of economy as well would be behaving in a very different way. And I think we need to be prepared for it. We, as in like all the supply chain people, packaging, R&D team, we need to be keeping updated on what's happening around the world in different markets. And then I think working on it. And I think being in a reactive mode would help, I think, for us. So we have to be proactive, understand what's coming into the markets, and then designing and developing things would be really helpful.
I mean, we talk about legislation being one of the drivers of change. I mean, Debashish, you just then talked about consumers. I mean, do you see that being a stronger driver for change for you? I mean, are people really looking for that sort of they want things to be done differently because they're starting to then, as consumers, realize how much waste there is and how much we need packaging to be improved. I mean, I suppose it's the balance between legislation and consumer behavior, really, for both of you, because you're both very much consumer-driven businesses, aren't you?
So I would say in last 3 years, I have seen the consumer awareness is becoming more and more across world. And we in Biastoff have conducted a consumer study across different countries. I personally have conducted consumer studies in India and African, sub-Saharan Africa, for example. And the young consumers are more aware of the problem, and they are more willing to participate along with the brands to do more. For example, if required, to pay more or take part in the CSR activities around the collection of the plastics, or designing of the product packaging, and appreciating that from the brands, I would say. And this is already happening in the European countries, I would say. So overall, the consumers are becoming more and more aware. But being responsible brand owners, it's also our duty, and it will also help us doing better business if we also make them aware. More and more education, consumer education, and informing them via various channels, and onboarding them for the greater cause.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it's a bit of education then of the consumers as well. I suppose that's differentiating your brand, but also differentiating why you're also, these commitments to 2025, this commitment to drive forward. Presumably that's also about the brand and the integrity of the brand, and appealing to those sort of definitely the younger consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an interesting question that's come in. We talk about the infrastructure. There's a question from George Apaya, and he doesn't say which country he's from, but he says something like, "There's nothing like this in my country." So I think he's talking about the segregation of materials and the recycling. So my question is simple: how do we start as a country? I'm not sure that's a simple question, but it's more if you're starting to look at proper recycling and segregation of materials. How do you start? And maybe that's sort of where's the best way of starting? I suppose this comes back to it. Does government have to drive this? Is this really has to be driven from government to start to put in place recycling and recyclability, segregation? I mean, it's quite a macro discussion, but I'd be interested in your views on that question.
Yeah, I can give my view on that. In fact, no, we don't have to wait for the governments to take the initiative in each country. And there are many examples, and I can pick up a couple of examples where companies have started changing their laminate structures to mono material. And in those countries, there is no infrastructure which is kind of in advanced stage, I would say. So including India, there are many brands who have changed their structures to mono material, thinking of the futuristic changes which might come. Similarly, the example I gave of Colgate Palmolive, we have started moving to recyclable tubes, and we don't know yet like whether all of the countries where we are launching this tube will be ready with the recycling, or the infrastructure will be ready for this particular tube. And we can't predict that. Of course, we can be ready for that. That's what I think we are doing, and this is the best we can do as a brand or corporates. At an individual level, I think the question which came in, there are 2-3 things which an individual can do. I think read the instructions if possible about disposal of the packaging, either plastics or paper, whatever it is, and then accordingly process the packaging in terms of disposal. Secondly, if there is a kind of wastage of any food or any liquid item or something which a person can clean, that would be helpful, because cleaning the packaging often is one of the very difficult job in terms of sorting and cleaning. It together itself is a very big process in terms of recycling. So that definitely, if the consumer can behave in terms of that particular action is taken at their end, it would be fantastic. And third, I think, yes, I think the thought process itself, that becoming aware that, okay, they want to be kind of recycling, participate in recycling, and contribute towards sustainability. That's it itself is a big thing, actually. So I think it's a good start.
Right. So that's really, again, consumers saying, we know we should be recycling, and almost like pushing back to the retailers and so on, please provide us with the ability to do some recycling here. So because that's then again consumer behaviour starting to drive the change. It's really interesting. So thank you for that, Sukhdev. So we had a few topics we wanted to cover in this discussion, and one of them was around how will packaging change as it becomes more smarter and more sustainable. And I think it also links into a question that Trudy has raised, Salandiak has raised in the questions as well, about should we be focusing on reducing waste? So I suppose this is also the same debate of, as both of you look at packaging, there's both, I suppose, the product packaging, but there's a packaging associated with the delivery and the way that how it's provided and supplied into the retailers and the warehouses. I mean, should there be a focus on the whole packaging and waste associated with packaging, because there's still a lot of packaging around, isn't there? That often, and we're all Amazon junkies in the UK now. I mean, we're all sort of press the button and we get a delivery, and there's always a load of stuff you then have to sort of dispose of or recycle a bit. So for both of you, are you having to look at the whole end to end of packaging and the whole design of it rather than just on the product itself?
Let me respond to it differently. I think obviously we packaging technologies always we differentiate packaging into three different types, like primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging. And tertiary packaging is the shipping containers, and in the whole supply chain, and the starting from the product filled into the primary packaging, then it is for multi packaging to be packed into a secondary packaging, and then so many secondary packaging into tertiary packaging. Everywhere till few years back, no brands were thinking about reducing this. It's like more consumer convenience, how to like e-commerce of the world. They were delivering, as you said, Duncan, they were delivering the product. The main intention was to deliver the product over the period of one day or one night. It was not how much packaging they were using, but the things are quickly changing now. So there are change in the packaging types, materials from plastics to paper or fiber based materials. However, we must keep in mind that completely changing the packaging from plastics to paper will also not be helping it. Ultimately we'll end up cutting down more trees unless we're using FSC certified papers or recycled papers. So in the whole supply chain, the effort is to reduce the packaging usage to the extent possible. In that case, I would say, if one can reduce the secondary packaging or tertiary packaging by innovating, by reducing the grammage, by reducing the price of shippers, by strengthening the grammage of the papers, for example, or by delivering the products in bulk, then handing over to the consumers, that will help to reduce the secondary packaging, for example. We are always trying to reduce, reuse the packaging components. If unless we do 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle, the ultimate aim for a sustainable world will not be possible. So at the end, the everything in the packaging designing needs to be rethought, and then reduction is the main thing, I would say, in every kind of packaging.
Right. And so, yeah, so you say it's design, but you also talked about the recyclable loop as well. I mean, earlier you were talking about the percentage of recyclable plastic that you can put into to stop using virgin plastic. So it's also making sure you've got that design work underway as well, isn't it? So that when it is used, it can be recycled, and then you can reuse it within your own products as well. So, I mean, Sukhdev, are you seeing it's a very similar view, or is it slightly different?
It would be similar in terms of how we approach things, and it is not one against another. I think we have to be looking at it from all the perspectives, be it the recycled content, be it converting all our material to recyclable material. There are, say, a few difficult to recycle or packaging which cannot be processed easily in many regions. So we are also looking at a list of the material which cannot be processed easily at many regions. And of course, in terms of converting many of our materials which are easily recyclable, that's now number one priority for us.
Right. And when you're looking at the, I mean, for both of you really, when you're looking at the future for packaging and the innovations that's coming through, what are you seeing as being the next focus areas for you? What are you seeing as being those innovations that will really start to drive the next level of development in the packaging area?
I would say, I think packaging is no longer a necessity. I think that's a very, very, I would say, rhetorical point, but then I would say we have to become experiential. Uh, we can open up any social media site or any of the news blog, anything people have been writing. We can see that everybody challenging the mere existence of packaging itself. Why is it required? Why do we have to deal with it? And they don't know exactly, I think, how to kind of work with the waste and how to dump it. And also, I think the transparency levels of the governments as well, I think, involved, or the institutions, it's not clear to everybody how the waste gets kind of recycled. So that's very true in many I would say geographies, as well as individual at individual levels. So I think it would be critical for all of us to keep innovating and iterating on our ideas. The most important point I think I would like to mention is, I think, having a right mindset, which is well supported by the sustainability tools, is something which we all have to imbibe in our teams. And that's one big thing which we are working on, that everybody has to understand what is the purpose of a packaging, and whether it is backed by the sustainability tools, and we understand how do we take it to the market. Yeah, in terms of the futuristic thing, I think the connected packaging is certainly one of the big things in terms of its existence. It will help us connect with the consumers, and as well as work pretty well in the recycling streams, where it will help us sort as well. So that's one of the big things where we are working on. The second part would be definitely in terms of paper-based solutions. A couple of our brands have already started working on in terms of paper-based packaging, be it toothbrush brands, where we have already introduced paper-based packaging, and that will help us at least contain some of the waste for time being in terms of plastic waste. And then also reducing the plastics. So we have introduced replaceable heads for some of our manual toothbrushes. So that's something new we have introduced, and it's getting a very good traction in a lot of markets, where people want to retain the 80% of the handle and only the 20% of the head gets replaced. And I would say that's something which consumers want, and they are loving it right now.
Right, that's great. And Devashish, from your perspective, what are you seeing as being those sort of, because there's some great examples there of things coming, and I don't think I'd heard of connected packaging before, but obviously there's things on its way through that are going to change. So what are you seeing as being the innovations coming forward and the developments?
I would say Sukhdev has touched upon almost every point. I would only, mention two things. One is, as he mentioned, consumer connect, and the Gen Zs of today are always, looking for more app based activities, everything around the app, and so it should be more trendy, more also eco friendly, and these are the consumers which we want to target,
Right.
also considering the other level of consumers. However, the Gen Zs are our, the inspiration for innovation, I would say. In that case, the personalization of the packaging, how much we are connected to the consumers through QR codes or artificial intelligence, and also if we can connect both of these with the sustainable solutions, nothing like it. So we in Biostop have launched many things in the last 2 years, I would say. We're the first company to launch 100% recycled aluminum cans for aerosols. So that means we are reducing the carbon footprint to the extent of 90% by doing so. We've also launched a bottle which feels like a tube. You can roll it up. So the need of utilizing the most of the product inside the packaging was always there, but we did it by reducing the reducing the plastic consumption by 50% and giving a shape of a tube. So these are the innovations we're bringing, just because not to show the world what we can do, but it's also needed. The consumers are loving it.
Yeah.
So I would say the combination of both the personalized packaging, which will also drive sustainability at the end of the day, is the key for future innovation.
That's really good. I think you just touched on there on some of this sort of. There's a question I think from Liam Yeo about sort of an emphasis being placed on more returnable packaging loops, especially in B2B environments. So I suppose I think you touched there about within stores, people will be able to sort of go back and recycle within stores, so that it's almost like that sort of the personal touch almost of this. You bought it from us, we're going to take it back, and then we're going to reuse it and bring it back into the packaging for the next product. I mean that's quite a big change, but quite a consumer behavior change as well, isn't it?
Actually, we've launched a refill station in Germany, in Nivea House, 2 years back, and it was a success. So it was an indigenous machine made by us, along with some agencies, and we have actually educated consumers to bring their the packaging. So in the first go, we we were giving the product inside the packaging, and they were taking it away and then coming back, and they were giving the bottles back to us, and we were cleaning it and refilling the product and then giving them back. In the similar way, in the countries where in the time of pandemic, consumers are not going to the stores, so the possibility of refilling at the stations were less. Then also there were possibilities, or developments and innovations happened by other brands, and also it's known to, I think, everyone. The trucks were reaching or taking the products to the consumer's house. The electronic vehicles or the e-bikes, they were actually delivering the product to the consumer's house. And if you can combine both of these refill station and the product delivery to the doorstep, nothing like it. The refill can happen at the refill station and at the doorstep of the consumers also.
Right. I mean, that sounds a fascinating change, but I think for both of you though, when you're talking about refilling tubes and toothpastes and soaps and so on, I mean, for most of us, if feel as if there's going to be some contamination, there's going to be some issues around it, or I mean, is that where you've got the development still to be done to make sure that what people get then is really pristine, high quality products?
Yeah, I would say, I think certainly quality is something which we cannot compromise on. And that is what I think all our brands stand for. So when we are even developing a packaging, or we are working on supply chain models for returnable or refillable packaging, I would say quality is something which we cannot compromise. And I can give a lot of examples like laundry. You mentioned about laundry. There is an oral care product as well, and that's something we are working on, and we're bringing more and more experiments to the market, where we are trying to bring a returnable or refill containers in the market. I can talk about one example. Recently, my daughter is a big fan of recently Lush products, and they have like this bath bombs or some of the products of personal care, and they have a very good consumer scheme, where if we get the container back to them, then they would kind of reimburse us, or in the next billing they would kind of give us some discount. Now that was really nice of them, because then we have to just get the container back to them, and we get the discount on the next billing. The important point here is, I think we as a consumer, where I think I and my family acts as a consumer, we need to remember to take back those containers. I think
Right.
that's the habit which you have to develop and inculcate, that whenever we are going to the market, we carry those containers, we carry those bags into the shops or wherever we are going. Or otherwise, if we are talking about say the supply chain models where it will be delivered at home, then I think there would be some cost to the service actually, because of course the CPG organizations cannot just bear the cost for entire supply chain end to end. Now if there is a convenience for the consumer that sitting at home, I would like to have my packaging refilled, or I need to have the returnable packaging, which is also possible. There are many organizations which are right now supporting our CPG companies with this such kind of operations sitting at home. It's working very effectively. However, this cost slightly goes up, which is a challenge right now. And I would say so. It's a responsibility for everybody, all of us, including consumers. If we want the benefit of this particular ecosystem, then we need to be actively participating in this.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. I mean, consumers need to be educated, and I think there's a few questions that have come up as we talk about sort of. You touched on some of them, and I think Dibesh should be talking about sort of paper replacing plastic. I think there's a question from Eshwar. Eshwar, welcome back. Eshwar always has lots of questions whenever we have supply chain talks. It's great that he's joined us again. But Eshwar was talking about we see lots of plastic usage in packaging, as in e.g. water bottles. And I know you were talking to Bashish about sort of PET, and that's really water bottles and the recycling there. Will there be any suitable alternatives, do you think, in things like water bottles and soft drink bottles? Because that's where a huge amount of packaging is used, and there's a huge amount of waste. I mean, I don't know, neither of you are in the water bottle industry, but it must be the similar challenge you're facing of replacing something like PET with another material that can be more easily recycled, or I suppose what you're just talking about there is refillables. That it's educating the consumer to go much more with refillable and not buy a bottle every time. I mean, I suppose that's the ultimate change, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say I don't think the water industries are looking at alternate packaging for water, because it's a very novel material, PET. And as I said initially, because most of the PET bottles are used in the food packaging, these are a food certified material. So, and as long as these companies are using PET, we will be benefited because we can use the food certified recycled PET into our packaging.
Okay.
As you rightly said, Duncan, the alternate is only to eliminate or reduce use of smaller bottles, like 50 ml or 100 ml of water bottles. Rather, you carry your own bottles and refill it in the refill station. So it's like a petrol pump, for example, or gas stations. If tomorrow we are installing more of these of pure drinkable water, then nothing like it. And I have seen these changes driven by many corporates. In meeting rooms, you won't see the small bottles. Rather, you will see glasses, and then there's a large dispenser. For selling the water into the bottles, I still don't think any other alternate than PET, for
Right.
example.
Okay.
I would like to just add, I would like to burst one popular myth that only packaging contributes to a lot of plastic waste. I think it's not the food or beverages or personal care products or packaging which contributes. There are many other industries which contributes much more than what we do actually. And I think water being a necessity of, I think everybody needs it. I would say, I think some of the points with Debashish touched. The other big thing is right now we need to also understand that in many of the countries, including the developed countries as well as the other countries as well, we are talking about, and including, I can say, example of India as well, the recycling rates of PET bottles are very high, almost close to 70 to 80% in some of the regions. And it is kind of helping the lot of economies to grow because PET, polypropylene, and HDP is one of the highest kind of recycled material right now, and thanks to the beverages containers or the water bottles which are being collected in an effective manner right now. So I would say yes, we need to have a look at it, but I would say there are far other problems in terms of impactful things, and we need to also address them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think both of you are obviously focused in your own areas on packaging, but I think Sukhdev, your point's well made. I mean, there's a lot of other major impacts across society, but I think you've also both answered a question from Namdi, who was saying, can you eliminate packaging altogether? I think both of you have sort of answered that question anyway, haven't you? Which is yes, you can, but there needs to be quite a significant change in consumer behaviour to be able to sort of get to that point where less and less or no packaging is used at all. But I think, for all of us, heading in that direction would be a really interesting one to see. So, I mean, if you were then saying, I mean, you're both experts in this area. For those of us who need to learn about this, how would we go about learning the best way of recycling, the best way of using packaging, I suppose, as consumers to look for things as to whether they're done correctly? I mean, where could we go to learn about the best way of driving consumer behavior, but also changing our own behaviors here?
if you say learning, it's not a direct question, Duncan. It's pretty pretty difficult question to be answered in a one line. For example, learning consumer behavior is also based on your own individual. Like, I think what I'm seeing, the schools, the education centers, schools, institutes, universities, they're all emphasizing on this, the to the kids, for example. They know more than us probably in today, to segregate the waste at home, how to compost at home. And this is a very promising, I would say, time where the kids are learning at the school, coming back to home saying that no, we should segregate the wet waste and the dry waste separately. I would say the best place to educate is a school. And the second one, the corporates, the brands can do campaigns like many other corporates are doing it. So, and then the government organizations, the agencies, they are also, by laws and regulations, if they can promote these practices, which will in turn indirectly or directly educate the consumers. And it's happening, I would say.
So that's you as a brand, promoting what you're doing, but also then driving behaviour. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, a lot is about education and education. A behavioural change coming from the youth of the world in terms of what they're learning and what they want to change. So I mean, Sukhdev, same question to you. I mean, how do we educate more people in this space, and how do we get them to sort of change their behaviours?
Yeah, I think Debashish captured good points, and I would say there is a need for a balance. I think we can't just stop from tomorrow that I will only go and buy whatever is available next door shop. And we can do that as well. I think, again, another experiment which we were trying, but I think ultimately we ended up like carrying 4 bags and 20 containers to that shop. Actually, it was a pretty difficult experiment. We did that
Right.
for a few weeks, but it's not practical actually. Because with the sort of life we are living, we want everything handy, convenient, and it's like something which we don't want to kind of compromise on. Hence, a balance is required where it is a kind of I would say a known and informed decision which we make, whatever we are buying when we are going to the supermarket or a local shop as well. I would say even the contribution of local shops would be immense, where we can go and then definitely look at products which are easily available, which will contribute very less to the environment. And I think the second big point would be, I think, understanding and knowing the labels which are there, how to recycle or how to kind of dispose of the waste. I think this education needs to be mandatory, not only with the kids, because generally there are like adults who are also disposing of material, who are the consumers for those products. So their education and information about various labels is very important, and I think we have to work together on this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I mean, we all do it. You pick it up, you look at the labels, and you're still not quite sure what it means. So understanding that, I think, is a really good point. Debashish and Sukhdev, we're out of time, and it's been really interesting. There's still questions coming in that I haven't been able to get to. I'm sure this is a topic that the whole thing about packaging and sustainability will come back to. But certainly, I'll appreciate, Eshwar, there's 3 or 4 questions we didn't answer there. There's another one that's come in from a follow-up from George about the recycling in Ghana, and a couple of others as well. So thanks everyone for the contribution, and certainly Debashish and Sukhdev, I really do appreciate your time today and sharing your thoughts and your insights. Just on the questions themselves, I have this wonderful supply chain talk mug we need to dish out. Eshwar, I know, has already received one. So I think probably I'll give this one this week to George Apaya, who is in Ghana, who was talking about that whole thing of infrastructure and how to drive that segregation of waste and so on, which we did earlier in the show. So, George, hopefully a supply chain talk mug will be on its way to you. So thank you for your contribution. So next week, we're going to be talking about enabling your team adapt and thrive in an environment of constant change. So we know we're in constant change in the supply chain. We know there's a lot going on, but how does the team adapt and thrive in that sort of environment of change? And my colleague Ian Scholar will be hosting that one for me. So that should be a really interesting topic. So hopefully you can join us then. and please do participate. But Sukhdev, Debashish, I really do appreciate your time today. It's been an excellent discussion. Thank you for joining Supply Chain Talk, and I look forward to seeing you all on a future episode. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.